Okay.
Hello.
Okay,
Hi. We are live. Don't know if anyone's watching, but hello anyway, if you are. We're finally doing a live show. It's been quite a while since we've done one for various reasons, and we're squeezing 2 books into this one. So we're going to be talking very briefly about Plain Bad Heroines, which was our book club pick for October. And then on to Legends and Lattes, which was originally going to be our book for November, but then we made it kind of December, January, winter book. And who knows what schedule we're on now. So
yeah, no one knows.
If you would like to hear us talking about books at some point. So we're going to start with Plain Bad Heroines. We're not going to spend very long on it because only Kayla and I have read it.
Yep.
And I don't think Kayla liked it that much.
I think I gave it 3 stars, but yeah.
Okay, so I'll explain briefly why I suggested it for book club, and then Kayla can tell us what she didn't really like about it, and then Amber and Nikki can mention if they want to why they haven't read it or haven't read it yet. We won't go into it too much because there's not much point. So we're going to spend most of the time talking about Legends and Lattes because I think we all really enjoyed this one. Okay, so Plain Bad Heroines is Gothic horror, which is the only type of horror that I'll read. I don't like horror, but I don't mind kind of spooky vibes. So I first read this in 2021. I read it in August 2021 because I heard about it on a bookish podcast that I love called Strong Sense of Place. They did an episode about books set in and around Hollywood and movies, and they talked about this book. And it's like a multi-layered story. So there's like a past bit where there's like this school where people keep randomly dying, and then someone wrote a book about the school, and then that book's being made into a film. So the other half of the story is about the people making the movie. So I think why people sometimes struggle with this book is because the first half is definitely very slow paced. There's a lot of building up a backstory, but I love character driven books, so that really appealed to me. I was really intrigued by all the characters. It's very queer. There's I think most of the characters are either gay or bisexual, which was why I thought it might appeal to some people in the book club. And it's got some very spooky vibes, and it's kind of the thing that I like about Gothic horror is the thing where you're not quite sure what's real and whether what's happening is real or supernatural or people messing with other people's minds. And so there was a lot of that elements in here, which was what I liked about it. So those are the reasons why I suggested it, like books about queer people, spooky stuff. I don't know, I just thought it would work for a Halloween book for us. Doesn't help that it's very long.
Yep.
So I think that put a few people off. But it's one that I really loved, and I thought other people might like it, which is why I suggested it. It doesn't always work out for everyone. So Kayla, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you thought about it?
Yeah, so I am glad that you suggested it because it would have sat probably on my shelves for who knows how long. So that was nice to kind of get through that and get it off the TBR. I think it was definitely too long for me, which is, usually I'm okay with gigantic chunky books, but like, I don't know. I think I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters, which was a big struggle. Also, this is just like a me thing. It had a lot of footnotes, and I struggled for some reason. I cannot find footnotes on the page, and I'm like, what does this relate to? So that was just like, having to spend extra time being like, all right, where did I miss this? And like trying to figure out what it corresponded to. I
think the asterisks for the footnotes were very small as well. They're very missed, but the footnotes are fun. The narrator's quite snarky, and a lot of the snark comes out in the footnotes. So they're really fun, but I can understand why that would be off-putting.
Yep. I think it's been a while since I've read it, so I'm like trying to struggle to remember what I thought about it. I definitely feel like the pacing was kind of all over the place. There were times where I was like, I'm into this, and I think it was a lot of like the past timeline that I liked more than the present timeline. then yeah, just like didn't really connect to any of the characters, kind of didn't love a lot of them. I also just like, I think the bugs that just like creeped me out, and I was just like, I can't handle any more descriptions of this. This is over the top, and like,
got a giant wasp on the front. I'm quite scared of wasps, and so there's one particular chapter where the first time I read it last thing at night, and I could not sleep afterwards. So when I reread it, I was like, when I knew that chapter was coming, like, okay, read that in the daytime. Like, there's just a lot of wasps and
is that throughout, or is it just the one chapter?
There's one chapter that's particularly bad,
okay,
which is in the first half of the book, but basically the two deaths that kick off the story is a wasp attack, and so there's kind of this ongoing thread of the yellow jackets, particularly dangerous form of wasps, that they're kind of a motif that runs throughout the whole book.
I have to say, I knew that there was some waspy stuff in there, and that definitely did encourage me to give it a miss.
I am definitely also afraid of bees and wasps, and so I was like, oh god, I can't handle this. And it's just throughout the book, and there were definitely, I can't remember if it was like specifically those sorts of descriptions or some of the other spooky stuff that happens. Like, I think there's like a bathtub that fills up with nasty water. Is that right? Or am I just confusing that?
There is.
So there were times where I actually like felt nauseous reading it. So that also didn't help, I think. But I do feel like it had some interesting spooky things. And I did like a lot of I really did like that past setting. I love a good school setting, so that helped. But it was, just kind of all over the place for me. And I'm pretty sure I did rate it a 3 stars. So, like, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, but I didn't love it as much as I hoped to.
Yeah. And I think that's part of, like, not every book is for everyone. And like, this was a book that I really loved it on the reread. I know other people that rave about it. They raved about it on the podcast that I mentioned because they loved it on there. But it's a book that won't appeal to some people for a lot of very valid reasons. So
I think it also depends what you want from your horror as well. Some people like the spooky, ghostly side of horror, and others really like the gory, vomity side of horror.
And this, it has a few like gross moments, like Kayla's mentioned. It is more on the spooky side. I think in terms of like the spooky stuff, it's similar to, for me, it's a similar level to Mexican Gothic. That was the first book we read for book club, which had some kind of gross elements, but more like the spooky, who can you trust, not really sure what's going on here kind of elements. So Amber, you're hoping to read it still? Nikki, you're
probably I'm going to hopefully read it in March. The reason I didn't was basically because I had loads of stuff going on at the end of the year, so I kind of ducked out of book club for the last 3 months. I was in Iceland, then we didn't have the live show anyway, so I could have read it. But Carrie did buy me
shows, and we were just like, haha, surprise.
I didn't know about the footnotes though. That has intrigued me a bit. I've struggled with footnotes in the past, particularly with Jay Kristoff, but that's only because I don't like his humor. So I think I'll be okay with these. But it does sound really good, and I really like I like boarding school settings, and I really like books about Hollywood or like famous people or movie making. So both of the timelines sound quite good to me. So I do still want to read it.
Great.
In March, not this month.
And I'm sure you'll report back to us when you have when you are reading it, what you think. Nikki, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you decided to give this one a miss?
I mean, there's lots of reasons. So one of them, I was joking before we started stream, that I was like, this is my shame bookshelf, and I've been trying really hard to reduce what's on it, and then okay. So I was kind of concentrating on books I own. I don't own that one. But I also generally avoid horror anyway, generally avoid historical. As with everything, there's exceptions to every rule, and Mexican Gothic is an exception to both of those rules. And Wasp put it off, the big chunkiness put me off, but it was just one of those things where I didn't think it was for me for everything I'd read, and from other people who had also loved it had spoken about it and said things that made me think I just don't think that's the one for me. But I think kind of like it's one of those things where it's easy to make that decision when I'm like sort of saying I'm concentrating on owned books, trying to get my TBR down. And like, you know, if I've got a good excuse to be like, that's just not for me, then I'll just be like, yeah, jump on that. Which I always feel bad about because I did that on the last few before October as well. So I hadn't actually read one of ours for a little while.
I did that on a couple last year as well, for various reasons. So it's
I've got Legends and Lattes and the next one, so you know.
I apparently actually did write some notes on Goodreads, which I thought I did not. So that's fun. But yeah, it's apparently I was like, I have a lot of mixed feelings, not really sure how much I enjoyed it. I appreciated the cool and creepy ideas, but it felt like a lot of setup without going anywhere or really fully exploring some of the ideas. But yeah, also the characters struggling to connect with that, which, yeah. And then I mentioned the asterisks specifically. I was like, I cannot see these to save my life.
It's funny because I do like a good footnote, but I listen to a lot of books with footnotes. Which can make
how does that work? Does it just like sound like part of
at the end of that sentence and say it in a slightly different voice so you can sort of figure it out or something like so? Ironically, Ebonite is a really good one for that because he does it as a different character doing it, because it's like from the author sort of thing. When like what was it? I was thinking of another one, but I can't remember what it was. But I have listened to a couple, like you say, Babel, I think had it, and like that was sometimes a little bit harder to tell, but. Like generally you can sort of tell from context, and I quite like that, but I often do find when I'm reading, because I read quite fast, I don't always see it, and I'll be like, I'll get to the bottom of the page and think this footnote's me scroll
where does that go?
So like I like a good footnote, but like equally I'm not necessarily great with them.
Also, before we move on, I just want to mention I did not realise this was by the same author of The Miseducation of Cameron Post.
Wait,
yes,
what?
It is. Yeah.
Which I read years ago.
I haven't
never made the connection.
Yeah. Because I feel like from what I've heard about that book, it's a very different book. So I'm really interested to see how she does a completely different style of book. But yeah, same author. Yeah.
That wasn't really relevant, just a random
random
surprise.
That's useful.
Okay, well, shall we move on to Legends and Lattes?
Yes.
I love this cover, by the way. I know there's some people that really
want
the original cover. But I do like that that's included.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. It's on the back as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And my favourite thing is you just get a glimpse. He's dark in the corner. Oh, where's my camera?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
What's that?
That's Thimble.
Thimble.
Oh, I will have to look. My friend. I can't look at it.
Yeah, he's wandering off with a pastry.
Oh,
my favourite.
I
love all of them.
I mean, I love them all. So shall we do a non-spoilery little bit, and then we'll go into more spoilery stuff?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So Nikki, I think you nominated this one. Do you want to tell us a bit about
one? Actually,
I think you did.
Yeah, I absolutely adored this, and like I read it. I don't even know when. I want to say sort of early last year.
Did you read it when it was still self-published?
Yeah, but it had been announced that it was being picked up. But of course, it hadn't actually been out that long when it got picked up. And then I was lucky enough to get and I read it on. I think it might have been. I read it on Kindle, but it might have even been on Kindle Unlimited at that point.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky enough to get an ARC, and then I met him back in November at Comic-Con.
Oh, cool.
And so picked up a copy and got him to sign it, which was wonderful. And he is absolutely fascinating to talk to because he wrote it in NaNoWriMo in like a month, and like has obviously done the same with the sequel. And I was just like,
wow,
I didn't realize. And of course, this was 1 year ago. This was last November.
Yeah,
like it was just like how did you write that not only so quick, but then get it to such a good standard, and then like I know it's self-published, but still published, like so quick, and then obviously like the joy of it being picked up and everything like that. It really is like a Cinderella story, and I love that. Like, and Travis is absolutely just a lovely human being. So like, yeah. But yeah, no, I read it because of the hype of it being picked up, and I was like, that just sounds amazing. And I immediately was like, why are there not more cozy fantasy books? And actually, interestingly, a friend of mine, Asher, has been kind of collating a list, and she writes sort of similar things. And I've read a couple of similar things since. And I'm like, there is a small but growing element of people who are doing things that are on that line, not necessarily quite as cozy, but like I think people are definitely they're going, but I like fantasy. I just want it to be happy.
He cites Terry Pratchett as a what's the word? Inspiration, doesn't he? I'm just trying to. There's a little interview with him at the back of my edition. I'm trying to remember why I read that.
Not read that version. Look.
It's Terry Pratchett and Hallmark movies that are like were the sort of inspiration in some ways.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I love that as well. I played a bit of D&D, and it obviously has like elements that you recognize from it, whether or not it's sort of direct or just inspired and everything like that. But you don't have to have read it, or have to have played it to sort of get what you need from it as well, which I really like. And it, like it's just a hug in a book. And I read it on audio, which he then narrates, and last month I think it was, with a couple of my friends, which was just a really good excuse, if I'm honest. But like we were trying to do so many chapters a day, and there's one that finishes at a particular point we'll come to in the spoilery bit, and I was like, you can't stop there, I'm just going to read an extra chapter. But yeah, anyway, so what did everybody else think? Had anyone read it before I nominated? Was it just me?
No,
I actually wasn't planning to.
I had kind of a similar experience. I was like, I don't know if I want to read this. I've heard everybody rave about it, but I don't know if it's for me. So I was glad that you nominated it, because it was a good excuse.
Yeah. Oh, that's intriguing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked it up if you hadn't nominated it. And I really loved it, so I'm really glad you did.
Well, and I do know one person who didn't finish it, and everybody else I know has loved it. But like proof that not all books are for all people. And a chat in my Discord literally on that today. But and as much as I think this is one of those ones where I almost struggle to see why anyone wouldn't. Sometimes you're just not in the mood for that sort of thing, or you like your angst and stuff like that. You don't want a cozy story. Weirdo.
It's completely angst free though, and we'll get to that more in the.
It's not.
There is there's a good amount of drama and conflict and impetus to keep the story going. But it is like I watched a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies over Christmas, and that is the exact vibes I got from it. It's like. City girl sent to the regional toy store because the bigwigs want to shut it down and she's got to try and save it. It's that kind of vibe,
It is.
I really wish you had said that, but yes.
That's funny.
And I just love that in this in the fantasy setting, you get all the the wonderful things about the hints of magic and the different characters, the different types of people. But you also get that just warm, cozy, this is set around a coffee shop vibe.
So did anyone not love it or even not enjoy it?
I gave it 4 stars, so it's not like an all-time favorite, but I mean, I read it in 24 hours, partly because of the live stream. So it's a really quick read. I did really, really enjoy it. I don't think there's anything I can pinpoint as disliking about it. I don't think it's just not an all-time favorite. That's why I didn't get 5 stars.
Yeah, I think 5, but equally I can see that. That's fine.
Yeah. I also feel basically like Amber does. Like I can't really figure out why I didn't love it necessarily, but I definitely enjoyed it. I think there were times where I was just like, I don't know if it was like slight boredom or just wanting a little bit something different. I don't know. It's like that
maybe a bit more of a spark.
Yeah. I don't know. But it was very cute, and I'm glad that we read it, and I'm definitely going to pick up the next one. So
yes. Yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I just really loved it. And I also read it quite quickly. I read it last weekend, but yeah, I read it, I think, in the space of about 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer. But
yeah, I mean, it's really not a long book in the first place, and it is a nice quick one. But I think it's like it's an interesting point about like wanting a bit more of a spark, and I think especially in like the first half or so of the book, like I can definitely see that there's a lot of, you know, I'm building my coffee shop and I am doing all this thing, and I don't know if my magic stone is really magic or if I'm just going slightly insane. And I think I just liked that it was nice and cozy and chill, and actually, like, you know, we all know that that is a brain positioning that is sometimes needed.
Yeah.
It's always going to be appreciated, and I know that's one of the reasons I've seen people say that's why I didn't keep going with it. So I get that completely. Like, and I think it's a really kind of valid point, but equally sometimes, you know, it's nice to have your Hallmark Christmas movie of nothing's really happening and everything's fine, you know, like.
Yeah, I think it's that people misinterpreting the high fantasy thing. Like, even though it says, like, the tagline is high fantasy, low stakes, good company. If people are misinterpreting the high fantasy and thinking it's going to be something much more epic and like kind of overlooking the low stakes thing, then I think that might be why there's kind of disconnect. Because I wouldn't have called it high fantasy other than that it features orcs and succubuses and
non-human characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely true of the setting, but not of the vibe. Like, and I think that is, you know, that's another really good point. I think, you know, we're so used to that being a very different type of book, but actually for me that's just sort of saying, well, we need all sorts of different books, and, you know, why haven't I got, you know, all my fantasy romances that are more Hallmark and less spicy like, why haven't we got a, you know, like a political thriller in there and stuff like that? And actually those books do exist, absolutely. Like, I mean, thinking of like Song of Sorrow and State of Sorrow by Melinda Salisbury is like kind of a you know, well, not necessarily that sort of high fantasy, there's no non-human characters that I remember, but, you know, definitely a fantasy world with political intrigue, and that's very much what that is, but not in the way that you see it done in terms of like swords and kind of wars and stuff. So it was, you know, they definitely exist. So, and I think we just need more things in there, because actually having a broad variety of things in your genre is always great, because it's how you convince people. You know, you'd be like, so you think you like political thrillers, have some fantasy, and you'd be like, no, you like some more fantasy. Like, just slowly convince them that they want to get into it.
I was actually thinking, like, the vibe of this in the, like, in terms of where it fits into the fantasy genre was quite similar to me to how Becky Chambers fits into the sci-fi genre, particularly with her fourth Wayfarers book, I think, because they all just sat around talking, which was basically what this was, and they did it excellently.
I had that thought a couple of weeks ago, because someone, I think it was Asher, was doing the list of like cozy fantasy, and one of them on there was a sci-fi, and I was like, well, that was a sci-fi, but also I think all Becky Chambers books are like that, and even the earlier ones where there is obviously a little bit more intrigue and fighting and stuff going on, that's not active in the book in many ways. You know, you are in a cozy vibe where you're just like, but I just want to be with my fan family and making friends, and you know, it's relationship books, and that, like, you know, we all love these things where people get to hang out with their friends, so why wouldn't we want more of them?
And I feel like it's very fitting for the winter for whatever reason. Like, I don't know, that was definitely the vibe that I wanted. I'm trying to think of when I did read it in December, and I think I read it like right before we went back to Arizona, so it was like there was some amount of like me trying to rush to finish it, which probably may have, you know, hampered my enjoyment a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I just like sometimes I just want to be cozy, like physically, and then read something cozy. It's just so much coziness.
Yeah.
But now I'm also curious. I'm gonna have to look up the list of other cozy fantasies.
I think
we can. It's in Justine's Discord, so we can share it with you on our on the WhatsApp group later.
Yay! Thanks.
Because another one that I think Asha mentioned in that list is another book we've had for book club, which was the TJ Clean one.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think obviously that one's a little bit more dramatic, but it's a hug in a book.
Yes.
Yeah. Similar vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else non-spoilery people want to say?
Yes, I have identified a thing.
Ooh.
Yes.
It kept it from being 5 stars. I think I wanted. Is her name Tandri?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be more of a thing.
Okay.
She kept popping up in the book, not the bookshop, bloody hell, the coffee shop. And she clearly had stuff going on in her past that kind of featured, but not too much. Yeah. And I wanted more of her, particularly at the end, which would be spoilery. So I can't go into that. So I think that's part of it. Like Viv was really well written, but she was obviously the main focus. But I feel like the secondary characters, because they became a family, could have had more if this book was a little bit longer. Yeah.
Because like you think that those are the conversations that are basically about to happen as the book stops.
Yeah.
So I would have happily read 100 pages of that.
Yeah, exactly. If it was like another 50 or 100 pages, I think he would have had time to have done that. And that would have been perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said earlier, my favorite Thimble was probably my favorite character, just because adorable little mousy baker. We don't really learn anything about Thimble other than that he's a baker, like a really skilled baker. So I think definitely there was room for more backstory of the other characters, but maybe that will be explored further down the line. And like the maybe starting to drift more into spoilery territory here. So anyone who might happen to be watching who doesn't want spoilers, maybe this is a good time to disappear. The Madrigal was a great character who I definitely want to know more about. And I'm hoping that she will feature more in future books. Like, how did she end up there? Like, what's her story, and how did she become this like kingpin in this little town?
Yeah, I did really love her character because it was like, you think it might be like a power hungry mafia type dude, and then it's this older woman, and I was like, ooh, that is fun. Yes.
Those pastries and douchebags.
I mean, you can't pastries though. Let's be real, because. But yeah, no, I definitely would have liked to see more, especially because her gang do seem a lot more forceful than she ever comes across.
Yeah.
Not that's because of the way that they had the conversation and like they made the deal and everything like that. But there is obviously a lot more steel to her than what we see.
Yeah.
Like there must be for that gang to exist.
Yeah.
But I like that the bit that we see of her is actually like she's not as bad as initially thought and everything like that. And I could read a whole book on her for sure. I could definitely have a whole book on like Tandri's backstory and and Cal and Thimble. It would be nice to know more about, and I just love them all. I want them all to be happy.
And the other one that I think would be an interesting maybe spin-off story, I don't know how many volumes he's planning to set in this world, but the spice merchant that they buy the spices from, the Thimble's baking, like just this like little old guy in this little old house that only very briefly features. I was like, I want to know more about this guy.
I mean, I always think that's a sign of a successful book when there's a character who's in it for what is probably about 3 pages, and you're like, but I want to know more.
And I think that part of what I loved about this book was that I was so invested in all the details. Like I just wanted to know more about everything.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that like you get a decent amount of world building for the amount of book that you get because it's not a long book. And for the fact that you've got this setting, but actually there is not a lot of world building in the sense of like there is a lot of backstory that is just not there in terms of like, you know, how the goblins are the only people with coffee, like how the spice merchants doing stuff and stuff like that, and like how Adventurers Guild works and the Madrigals gang works and everything like that. Like there's, I suppose it's more kind of character backstory than world building in some ways, but there's definitely that element of it. But equally, I can sort of see why it's not in there. I think it wouldn't work if a lot of that stuff was included because it would take away from the vibe of the book and the way that the story is crafted, especially considering how much of it is around Viv's sort of, you know, it's very much her point of view and things like that. I would happily love it, but I also don't necessarily think it would. I think it would ruin the book in many ways.
Yeah. Did you guys get the where's my camera? The prequel story? Have you read that?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, I was really pleased that was included. It's like a little prequel of how Viv discovers coffee. So it's got a bit of a bit more information. Sorry, I'm getting tired, so my words.
Okay. Sorry, we don't need words.
Information about the library things. What I can't remember what they were called. Like the university type things.
Oh yeah.
They're on a mission and Galena goes to speak to someone and Viv's like kind of just left browsing in this library, so she starts like writing notes about what she wants to do with her cafe, but she doesn't know it's a cafe at that point, and she's like, she has this plan to change her life but she doesn't know what to do with her new life, and then they find this coffee shop and then she's like, this is the thing. And it's really
and I do wonder if that's how the author, because he compared his sort of life story and career change in the Q&A to Viv's, because I can't remember what he said he was doing before, but he was doing something and then he changed to audiobook narration and now he's changed to being an author. So I wonder if that's how he also felt like he had to a different purpose as he got older. And then this book was the coffee shop.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry, Thimblet recipes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited to try.
Nice. Yeah, I think he had worked in video game development. Like I thought I had seen that he worked on the Torchlight games, which I've actually played one of them before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's fun. It's like, you know, fantasy. It's more of like an animated style than Diablo, for instance, but it's that same sort of game. With just like basically you're in a fantasy world and just go out and wreck shit. And I'm pretty sure I have a unicorn companion in the game that I was playing. So that's, you know, always a good bonus who will come out and help me. But anyway, yeah. So I think he was in video game development for a while. But I don't know
you're right.
long.
And then in his 40s, he changed to audiobook narration and now to this.
Yeah. Well. So in terms of like more spoilery thoughts, I mean, obviously we delved into it a little bit, but
yeah,
is there anything in specific we want to get into?
What about
their names?
What was he called?
Fennis?
The antagonist, the elf.
Yeah, I think it was like Fennis, maybe, or something.
Something like that.
Like, and that whole storyline about the stone. So, Nikki, you mentioned earlier this magical stone, and is it working or is it not working? And like the kind of
love that part of it.
and it's her former.
Yeah, one of her adventurer colleagues.
That's
like
crewmate. Trying to steal this stone from her, Like, I loved that concept, and particularly when she meets the old gnome at the end, and he like explains about the stone and what it like, how it doesn't do what everyone thinks it does.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh. And the little old gnome character playing chess, like, I hope we get more about his story as well.
I
was intrigued by that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the Scarlet Stone I really liked, because I know that like Viv was sort of saying, like, you know, I'm taking a chance on it. And I don't think she necessarily, like, I mean, obviously you get the whole way through where she's sort of like, I sort of believe, but I don't know. But also, like, I don't think she thinks it'll do what, let's call him Venice if we're not sure. Like, you know, he clearly thinks it's, you know, like road to literal kind of fortune and riches. And I don't think that she's ever really kind of thought that. She just thinks it's going to be sort of lucky, I guess.
A good luck charm, yeah.
And it's definitely interesting that, like, through the book you have kind of discussions on what it might or might not do, and if it works. And that, like, you know, we come to the thing where it's more, you know, drawing like to like and having people useful to you around, and the way that it could then backfire on someone who is less of a good person, everything like that. And I just really enjoyed that being the way of it, but also the fact that it's not, you know, it's not a cure-all, and it's not like, you know, there's never any sort of like, oh, this is absolutely, it definitely worked. Like, it still could have not worked. And the book would work, and I just really like that, because I think too often you see sort of like, you know, this is my magic weapon and I'm here to kill everybody, or you know, whatever. And it's like, there should be an element of doubt about these things. I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I think it was a really good thread that ran through the entire thing, where she was questioning it in the beginning, and then at the end where it completely backfired on Venice.
Oh, and the dire cat.
Yeah. Yes.
I was expecting her to be everyone's favorite.
I mean, yeah, she was good. She didn't bring sweet treats, so.
Then I want to know what's going on with that chess game.
Yeah,
he's into some timey-wimey stuff, and I don't know what it is.
Okay, so for a while there, I was like, does the dire cat have like some sort of telepathy and is playing against?
I did wonder that too.
I've been into that.
But yeah, I think there's definitely some sort of time travel situation involved where he's playing against himself in various timelines.
Yeah. And he knew how things would work out. And I think he said like he's not sure what order things are going to work in, or something like that. So I'm very intrigued by him. If they if the author wants to do a spin-off book about him, that would be very intriguing. Or maybe he'll just connect all of the other books.
I was saying, because I know
Sorry, I just said kind of like Hoyd in Brandon Sanderson's books. He keeps popping up everywhere.
Because I know the next book is not centered around any of the characters that we know.
Well, I thought the prequel was about Viv.
That's what Goodreads says, but then at the back in the Q&A, the author says that he's doing a spin-off, but it's got entirely new main characters. So I don't know if Goodreads is correct.
I don't.
Yeah, unless it means this pages to fill at the end. The short story is
maybe.
Because I got the impression the next book is about a bookshop.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Goodreads does specifically mention Viv.
Yeah. But then why would it be about bookshops if it's about her?
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm just looking it up, but I'm being slow because Goodreads is a big sign in.
I think Goodreads might have merged the two.
Yeah, because it's Bookshops and Bone Dust.
Yeah.
It's listed as Legends and Lattes 0, which is interesting, but I don't know that that's necessarily.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely. I think that's the.
Use them, because pages to fill at the end of this
I think that's something completely different. I follow him on Twitter, and he's been tweeting about the characters, and he's got a couple of little art bits, and especially one that's like it's a half dog thing. It's very cute, and I love it.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I did see that when he tweeted it.
Cute. So I think it's a similar vibe, but and possibly same town. So we might see some of our characters, but I don't think there's necessarily any direct crossover.
Okay. Looking at the synopsis that Goodreads has, that's not the same as the page still in this book.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm so confused.
No, maybe he's doing multiple books.
Well, also, because a Goodreads librarian can put anything up, so it could just be that somebody's put up and it's just completely wrong. One of those things where you need someone in charge to go and have a look at it, but you don't know who's in charge to ask them to do it.
Well, but if you look at Macmillan, they also have the same synopsis.
I do know. So maybe it is about Viv? But that's not the impression I got from the Q&A.
No.
What a mystery.
It is a mystery.
I've heard them say about it either, but who knows?
Click on his.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out in November.
Is that when it's out?
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Well, supposedly.
Yeah, but it'll be good. But I would definitely expect to see some of our favorites and little cameos. I say some of our favorites. They're all our favorites.
Speaking of, going back to Kerry's question, who was everyone's favorite?
Yeah,
all of them.
Yeah, I don't know. They are all.
Mine was definitely Thimble.
Yeah.
Easily.
I think, even though we probably know almost least about him of all the main-ish characters, including possibly the bard. Just because he doesn't talk a lot, but I just who doesn't love a baker?
Yeah, I love that he was a baker. He was super quiet and yet still wanted to barter for free coffee, which I loved. And also, none of the other characters take the mick out of him for being that quiet. Even the people around, the random people around town, they don't say, "Oh yeah, he's a weirdo. He doesn't say anything." They call him a genius.
Yeah. And I think even before they had respect for who he was, even though people didn't necessarily have known about the baking and stuff like that. So I just love it.
Like that it mentions an interaction with Viv, the old lady neighbor, who is a terrible baker but thinks she's a genius.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's trying to exchange recipes with him, and that's when he pretends that he doesn't talk at all.
Yeah.
I feel
mainly arm movements, I think.
Imagine that I would do that. Oh no, just someone you don't want to talk to.
That Mariah Carey gif, where she goes, "I can't read all of a sudden, I don't know."
Yeah, what a legend.
Oh my goodness.
This is a character that we haven't talked about at all yet.
Yeah.
The neighbor character, what's she called? Lainey. Sorry. Yeah, getting my names confused. That's interesting, actually. Both of the books we're talking about today have an old lady character called Lainey.
Oh, really?
Putting that out there.
Wow.
Some sort of connection.
Random.
Yeah. So Lainey, the neighbor, she was fun. I liked her.
Yeah, I would again like to know more about her, because I think she's probably got an interesting backstory. But again, there's only so much we can do.
Yeah.
And I think kind of a good book does want you wanting to know more about all those characters.
Yeah.
So that's always a good sign. Yeah, I think from my Viv standpoint, I like the idea that she was just there going, do you know what? I got into adventuring because I'm an orc and that's sort of what we do, and I'm strong and I'm not good for anything else, and slowly coming to the recognition that it's not making her happy, and looking, and clearly the backstory that I've not read, that's the short story, is her realizing that she deserves more and should look for another opportunity and finding that. But I do love the fact that she has enough sort of self-care and self-love to be to recognize that and to be able to act on it, and I think that's wonderful. But I also love the way that she's sort of I've got this stone, I'm gonna trust it, so even though I'm not 100% sure, like I've got this like wonderful, beautiful lady coming into my shop, and I'm not, I'm not sure about her, but yes, let's do it. And I was just like, what are you on? You're an absolute lunatic. I love this for you. like her first interaction with Henry is so brilliant. Like,
yeah,
it's
so awkward. I love the awkwardness of it. But that was one of the things I really liked about the book as well, was it was like about not judging people based on their appearances. Like, because Viv knows that everyone treats her differently because she's so big and imposing. And like Tandri knows that what is said about her species, and Cal knows what is assumed about him. But there's this real sense of actually the value of people is not in what you stereotype about them, but you actually have to learn who the person really is. And I just thought that was really beautifully done. And the bard, I can't remember his name.
Pendry.
Yes, as well. That he's from this like really he's a stonemason, isn't he? He's from a stonemason family, but he just wants to make music, and but he's still a really good stonemason as well. And I was just like, that was such a lovely touch that when he came to help rebuild the cafe. We haven't talked about either the fire, the destruction of the cafe. Like,
So the place I talked about stopping earlier was literally, I think it's the end of chapter 24 or 25, and it was literally like it had just burned down. And you're like, knowing what happened next, and I was still like, no, I need one more chapter. I can't end it there. It's too sad. And like the attempts earlier as well of like how that works and how it plays out and things like that, and like the student who comes and helps protect it and everything like that. I thought it was all really well woven in to give it just enough intrigue and just enough like threat to to have that hallmark moment of like there's going to be something in there to antagonize against and everything like that. But I do think that it burning down was so devastating in so many ways, but obviously then you get the beautifulness of being able to rebuild something different and better, even though like not necessarily the money to do it and everything like that. And I think probably, let's be honest, that's the most unrealistic part of it.
But I think that was the real hallmark movie moment, was after the cafe's burnt down and everyone pulls together to rebuild. And like, I mean, I watched a number of those Hallmark movies with my fiance, and the ones that he liked the best were the ones where you had the like this community spirit of everyone coming together. We watched one that didn't have that at all, and he was like, well, that wasn't as good as the other. It's not have this element of like, we've got to put on a party, or we've got to like rebuild the community hamper so that everyone can come, or we've got to save the coffee shop. There was one film that we watched that didn't have that. He's like, yeah, that one wasn't as good. But it is that feeling of like the whole community banding together to restore
and picking the main character back up.
I always loved that, so totally agree.
I'm sure there's a trope name for that, but I don't know what it is.
I mean, I feel like it's extension of found family in many ways. It's an acceptance of the community at large, which is it's just always lovely, let's be honest. Like, that's where a lot of us always want to aspire to be, as much as communities like that don't always exist in the same way in the modern world. Like, it doesn't stop us wanting to have that around us, and for us, I would say, it's our wonderful book club. Twee moment.
Yes. I love it.
It was interrupted by the cats. I'm sorry.
Is it a book club if there's not a cat? Let's be honest.
I thought it was kind of interesting just thinking about Viv and her sword. Like, there were moments where I was like, it's probably stupid to not have your sword available for, getting away these ruffians. But at the same time, I admired Viv's commitment, I guess, to her new path of like, no, because then I could, if I pick that up again, then, my new life is in jeopardy, I guess. Yeah. So while I was like, I don't know how practical that is, it made for some good moments. And then, I think she sees the sword and the wreckage of the fire and it's like all destroyed. So that was like, oof, that's rough. But then they remake it into something really nice, don't they? I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
I loved that moment. But I agree with you completely. And I love that she stood by it, but also was tempted by it as well. She was like, I've got my convictions, but it's so tempting to deal with this the way I would have always dealt with it. And obviously, actually, that would have ended very differently with the madrigal, which would have been interesting itself. But it's equally as well, like, even after it burned down, and obviously she didn't necessarily have it, like, she was there going, well, I need to get money. Do I go back to that life and everything like that, to show that sort of, what do I do? How do I keep going? How do I survive and everything like that? Yeah. Definitely good.
I feel like the whole time I wanted to have coffee and pastries also. Like, this sounds delicious.
Really sad that I don't like coffee. Like,
oh man, yeah.
I'm like, I don't like the taste of it, but also it's way too much caffeine for me. I can't cope with that. So yeah, the whole time I was like, oh, I get the same vibes about tea, but clearly like tea was commonplace in this world and coffee was this new speciality. I was like, I wish I could get the sensation of it. It didn't detract from my enjoyment of the book, but I was just like, oh, it makes me wish that I liked coffee.
That's so interesting because I don't drink tea or coffee. And I didn't feel too much on that sense of it. Like, I still got the vibe. I mean, I like a good coffee shop. But I was dying for them to invent hot chocolate.
Yeah, well. I was looking for the invention of hot chocolate as well.
Like, come on. That would have been funny.
I wonder if you'll see a more expansive menu if he does sequel books that come back and feature the bookshop. Oh my god, the coffee shop. And we can gradually see the menu get added to. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think that would be fun.
And I liked the way that, like, I liked the gradual expansion of the menu as they came up with different ideas.
Yeah.
And, like, the thing about adding the iced coffee because of the student Hemington.
Yeah,
I wanted to say Hemingway. I knew it wasn't Hemingway.
Yeah. Not quite.
And he's just coming in to explore what happened in the shop, but he has to buy the drink, but then he doesn't drink the drink. And then she's like, oh, he said he doesn't like hot drinks. Let's try ice drink. And then he drinks it without even realizing it. Just thought that was such a moment.
I absolutely loved that. And I also wanted a crescent. Like, I was like, croissants. Num num nums. And I don't even really like cinnamon rolls, and I was like, I want a cinnamon roll.
I like cinnamon rolls.
Oh, I was craving cinnamon rolls so badly.
Yeah.
So, basically, this book will make you hungry. But I always like that. I like a book that makes me hungry because that means there's lots of food in it.
Any more thoughts, comments? I'm still holding the book.
I mean, it was adorable. Clearly it was a hit. And I'm really looking forward to figuring out what he's going to write next and then reading it.
Yeah, I dropped the link that I put in the private chat. That's, I think, one of the new characters, which is like a griffin dog.
That's it.
Hot roast, I guess.
It's really, really cute.
Yes.
The pot roast is in the book. Like, in fact, I don't know. Now we're on his website. I'm like, is there any info about the new one? There is not. That's a shame.
Yeah.
But that was definitely the dog I was thinking of. Thank you.
And if it's kind of a companion novel or a prequel, it has potential to be another book club book, because we haven't done any where we're continuing series. But a companion novel or a prequel, I think, would work for book club. So
yeah, I think that would be perfect. I was actually thinking we should do another Becky Chambers soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talking about what we might be reading in the future. So we've got our next 2 books picked, haven't we?
Yep.
So our next book is Murderbot. All Systems Red. That's the name, isn't it?
All Systems Red.
So excited.
So, that was another one that I suggested, but I haven't read it yet. So so that's our kind of February/March pick. Sorry about my worms. So we're aiming to have a live show for that probably towards the end of March, and then a number of us have been approved for arcs of the Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi, if I've said that right, which is Shannon Chakraborty's new book. It comes out in March, so we're going to be buddy reading that soon.
End of February.
Yeah, end of February. So that will be the next book that we talk about after All Systems Red. So that will probably be like April, maybe May time. We'll have a live show for that. So we're going to try and get a bit more organized and probably try and promote the book club a bit more as we get back into the swing of it. But we've kind of decided, we agreed that one a month was not great for all of our schedules. So that's why we're kind of going to bi-monthly. So yeah,
I think one every 2 months is doable. That way, if we need to do a couple of months early, a couple of weeks early, or a couple of weeks late for the book club, it's not really the end of the world as much. It gives us, because before it was sort of like one weekend, maybe the weekend before, and now it's this like real 4 to pick from that would be a lot more reasonable. And I think kind of that's a bit.
I think 6 to 8 weeks works quite well.
And I think kind of like, we could definitely say, like, if it was say April, May, we'll do it actually mid-May. As long as we've all read it, it's sort of fine.
I'm sure we will, because we're all very excited.
Well, we were talking about doing a buddy read, also,
I've got a lot of things happening at the end of May, so it might have to be a bit early.
And I was just thinking, like, if we did one at the end of March, that's obviously a busy time for Ms. Kayla.
That's right.
So
very true.
Although, I mean, Murderbot is a very short book. I think it was like a 50-minute listen at the speed I go to on script. So nice.
It's definitely novella, because originally that was why it was meant to be our December book, because we said, we do novellas or graphic novels for December because they'd be shorter and easier to read. Just with all our life situations,
we're all nightmares basically. I mean, I've read the first 4 novellas. I've not read the full novel or the 6th novella, so I think that's going to be an excuse for me to go back and read those. But I think I'm going to have to reread just All Systems Red right before we do it, otherwise I will absolutely not know which is in what book.
I've requested it from the library. They now have 2 copies, both of which are on loan, so who knows how soon I'll get it, but it's also on my Amazon wish list. So if I haven't got it by like the beginning of March, then maybe I'll just buy it, because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. So
I mean, the only thing I will say is it's one of the Tor novellas, which are I think we've talked about this on chat before, that they are nearly always bangers, frankly. Like, I don't know how they're just all so good, but they are also not the cheapest way to buy a book. Like that continually puts me off buying 5 and 6 on those particular ones, but I must do, because I know I'm going to love them. So it's just going to have to happen. But yeah, I do recommend the audio on that one. It's good. Like, if audio is for you, which I know it's not for everyone.
So thanks to anyone that may have been watching or may be watching this at a later point, not live. We have a Discord, which I'm sure is linked in the description, which I'm going to try and get better at actually doing stuff on there, because it's not been very active recently. And yeah, you can check out all of our channels or blogs as well. And yeah, thanks for maybe watching if you have been. So bad at this.
No, that was good.
Anyway, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.